YouTube, welcome to another edition of Todd Tinkers with Tech. For today's video, I wanted to dig into this Apple iMac G4. This is a machine I picked up from shopgoodwill.com, and it was an auction that I won for $33 plus shipping. Thankfully, it was nearby and shipping wasn't all that expensive. Let's have a little look at the history of these Apple iMac G4 machines. After the success of the original multicolored iMac G3, Apple wanted to follow it up with something a bit more sleek and slim, using an LCD screen instead of the bulky CRT of the current models. The story is that Apple designer Johnny Ives and his team had come up with an option that had the computer built in behind the screen, possibly similar to the 20th anniversary Mac. Steve Jobs didn't particularly like this option. It still felt too bulky to him. Steve invited Johnny over to his house, and while they were taking a stroll through the garden, noticing some sunflowers, they came up with the idea of a computer with a movable head like a sunflower reaching for the sun. The first iMac G4 was announced on January 6, 2002 at the annual Steve Jobs Macworld keynote, and was marketed as a digital hub for the home. The low-end models started at $1,300 and went up to $1,800 for the top of the line, with 256 megabytes of RAM and a 60 gigabyte hard drive. So when I won this auction for $33, I think one of the reasons why the bidding wasn't too high on it is that it said in the description there was an issue with the screen being very dim. And so I won the auction and I started Googling, what are the possible issues for a dim screen, and a bunch of results came back that might be the transformer for the LCD panel, and so that's what I thought it was going to be up against some major electronics repair in this machine. But I got the machine open and I fired it up, and I'll show you the easy fix. So let's power this thing on. When I opened up this machine, I was surprised at how good of condition it was in. It was a little dirty. It still has some scratch marks that I haven't quite been able to get off the base, but generally this machine was in excellent condition. And it fires right up into OS X. So in order to fix the screen issue, it actually was probably one of the easiest things in the world. I guess a lot of people don't know, but there's screen dimming controls in the operating system on the Mac. So all I had to do is go in and brighten up the screen. On this particular keyboard, it happens to be F15. Some other Apple keyboards, it has a dimming key on it. But anyway, instant problem solved. Always nice when fixes are that simple. So one of the awesome things about this particular machine is the design. I mean, it really is a inspiring design that Apple pulled off. I think it might be one of their best designs ever for a piece of hardware. I mean, just aesthetically, this thing is just super cool. It was expensive back in the day, but aesthetically, I think it's just super cool. You can see these are the basic specs for the machine. So this seems to have a DVD reader and a CD writer, so it doesn't look like it'll burn DVDs. But thankfully the drive does work. I've tested it, and it's reads CDs with no problem. Also, the drive opens and closes just fine. So it's showing one of the DIMM slots as being empty on here. And that's interesting because the shots in the auction actually showed it with 512 megs of RAM. So I'm going to guess that maybe the main SIM that's inside the basketball here might have gotten dislodged during shipping. I don't know, but I'm not going to dig too deep into this. Eventually, I'll probably want to replace the 60 gig IDE hard drive with an SSD at some point. Just for fun, I'd like to have a little more space and, you know, get the vintage Adobe stuff working on it. I think it would be fun just to have on display. But anyway, let's dig into it a little. All right, so there we've got the airport card, and we've got a 256 megabyte SO DIMM there, DDR1, and that actually seems to be seated properly. No issues there. All right, so now to dig in further, we need to deal with some torque screws here. Just look at that screw. I mean, that's something that I don't think other computer companies of the day would ever have a custom machine screw like that. Pretty cool. All right, so now that we've got the screws out, you need to use a spelooger, or in layman's term, a guitar pick, to separate this outer section. I don't think this machine has ever been cracked open before, honestly. There it goes, finally. So it looks like we've got a lot of dust in there built up from over the years. Incidentally, the RAM that I thought wasn't seated properly seems to be seated just fine. So one of the interesting things on this computer is that the heatsink on the processor here actually diverts heat to the actual shell of the computer. So that was a pretty innovative design that they had, to use the whole outer metal shell, which is super heavy duty metal. That whole thing becomes like a giant heatsink for the computer. It's pretty cool. So let's see if I might be able to get some of these cables off. All right, so we gave it a good dusting. It's all nice and clean now. So first thing I'm going to do is replace this battery. I don't think it's soldered in. So this is the battery that was in there. It's a 3.6 volt. And this is what I'm replacing it with. Purchased from Amazon. Figured might as well get a 2-pack. Might need another one someday. Okay. Battery replaced now. This is a 256 megabyte stick of RAM, and I was going through my parts bin. I happen to have a 512 stick of DDR1, so throw this in and hope it works. Oops, nope. So that's unfortunate. The 512 megabyte DIMM I had is not the correct PC133 that this machine needs. Oh well. So that's gonna have to go back in there. Just wanted to show a better view of the CPU heatsink and where it has contact with the upper shell. Whenever you open up one of these machines, the best practice is to remove and replace the thermal paste on these contact points. Here's a sped up version of me doing that and reassembling the machine. So I'm plugging the power back in, and let's see if she'll fire up. Yes, I think we're all good. Oops, removing the battery triggered this warning about a bad clock date. Easy enough to solve that problem. Now, let's have a look at the RAM. Yes, showing the full 512 megabytes in all their glory that was supposed to be there. I guess just removing the RAM and replacing it did the trick. I did run into an issue with it not being able to connect to my Wi-Fi. The old airport just doesn't play nice with modern routers. Oh well, nothing an Ethernet cable can't solve. I will eventually try and upgrade this to the full 1 gigabyte of RAM that this machine is capable of, and also swap out the 60 gig IDE drive for an SSD with an IDE to SATA bridge board, but I'm going to call it a day for now. Just cool to see this thing running. So that's going to wrap up this video on the Apple iMac G4. I appreciate you watching, and do me a favor, hit the like button, give me a subscribe, and leave some comments. What do you think? I appreciate you watching.